Hey, good people. My name is Janae Brown, and I am the founder and the senior publisher of Open Book Publishing. And I want to thank you for tuning into another episode of Dear Authors. So, Dear Authors is powered by Open Book Publishing. And Open Book Publishing, we help leaders write and publish their book in 180 days or less. That's right, leaders. We can help you publish your book in 180 days or less using our Done For You publishing services. And because authors have so many questions about the writing and publishing process, we are here for Dear Authors to talk all things writing and publishing. So for today's episode, we are discussing book launches, book releases, and everything in between. But you guys know I write books and publish books. I do not do events. So we have a very special guest, Miss Breanna Wolfe, who's going to join us today to discuss how to curate I can't talk today, a memorable book launch. So, hey, Breanna, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing great. How are you, Janae?
I am good. I'm so good. Good day to you. I'm super excited for today's episode because, like we were talking about in the green room, I know how to write and publish books. I do not how to throw an event launch, a book launch, all that type of stuff. I was like, but I know somebody who does.
Yes, for sure. Here to help.
Right. So I'm super glad to have you here because I think that, book launches, book releases is the intersection really between what I do and what you do. So I'm glad that both of us are on here to really help authors navigate how to really curate a memorable and a lucrative book release and a book launch, right? So I'm
Yes.
super glad to have you on, my dear.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Of course, of course. So let's get right into it, right? From an event perspective, what is a book launch? Like, tell us what it is.
Yes. So, a book launch is essentially your hello to the world. It's your, I just wrote a book. I want you to know, hey, y'all, I've been working real hard on something. Here it is.
Mhm.
So, it's a little bit different than what your book signing would be. I know people tend to say book launch, book signing, two things a little bit different. So it's essentially, like I said, it is your hello to the world. It is putting out there what your book is about, what your book represents, kind of a little bit of your brand of your book. You are showcasing that to the world with your book launch. So it is a chance for your readers to get to know you a little bit, especially if you're a first time author. They're
Right.
not going to know anything about you. So it's your chance to showcase that. It is your chance to showcase, what you've been working on. So yeah, that's a little bit kind of what a book launch is.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because you mentioned that a book launch and a book signing are two different things. So a book signing is just them going and signing the book, right?
Yeah, book signing is typically your book has probably been out a little bit that they've read your book, and so these are people who are coming, who want to meet you and get their book signed. Versus, like I said, your book launch is the very beginning stages of the book that you've created.
And thank you for that clarity because I personally have seen, and I'm sure some of our listeners have seen too, a lot of intersection between the two, where at the book launch there is people sign, well, the author rather is signing the book. So a
Mhm.
lot of people do have like, well, what's the difference? So I'm so glad that you provided that clarity. And I would even go a step further in saying like book signing is typically what occurs during your book tour, especially
Mhm.
if you're doing an in-person tour and you're stopping at various bookstores. The book signing is what happens during the tour, but the book launch, like you're saying, is just like a, hey girl, hey, we out here.
Yes, exactly. And I was one of those people too. Before I started like looking more into this and got more into events, I didn't know the difference between book launch, book signing. But that's why I'm here now. And after experience, I know. So
Super good. Well, thank you for that clarity. And so now that we're talking about book launches, right? Is there anything specific that should differentiate a book launch for a nonfiction author versus a fictional author? Are there any things that should be different for the two?
I think that your book launch, well, let me back up. I'm all about personalizing things and making it very specific. So your book launch should imitate what your book is about. So you don't want to have a book launch, let's say, that's for kids, like a kid's book,
Mm-hmm.
and you're tailoring it towards like a biography type of book launch, something that's very I'm not gonna say boring, but like very direct, very a little bit more tame versus like a kid's book. You want something
Sure.
that's gonna be a little bit more lively. So you want to be able to tailor the type of book launch that you do to the type of book you wrote. Which is very important because again, like I said, people are coming to learn what your book is about, what who you are as the author, what you are about. So that is key. Um, Also, I think it's about the type of place that you do your book launch, the time that you decide to do your book launch, the like what you're going to have there all kind of depends on the type of book you wrote. Again, if you did something that's geared towards kids, the type of place you're going to do a book launch is something completely different than if you're writing a book that's geared towards adults. You're not going to
Mhm.
do it at kids library. You're not going to do it at a school, things like that where you want more adults to come. So
Sure.
just little things like that, you might not think are like big deals, but they matter in deciding, the details of your book launch.
I'm really glad that you said that because I talk a lot to authors about keeping their reader in mind. And I find a lot of times, especially for first time authors, the book is so personal to them. Like it's like their baby, they're married to the book almost. And so they want all these fun things that are unique to their personality, but doesn't necessarily draw the type of audience that they want to be there. And so, to your point, if you wrote a book about event planning, right? And
Yeah.
it's event planning for entrepreneurs, but you're a mom who just loves your babies and your kiddos, you probably still should not have the book launch at a kids library. We know that you love the kiddos, but it's for entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And so it's super important to keep the reader in mind because your book launch is a way, like you said, to announce who you are to the public, and that's part of your brand. And
Mhm.
so your book, everything connected to your book needs to be directly connected to the brand that you're trying to build because your book is an asset to that brand.
For sure, for sure. I
Mhm.
love how you said that. An asset to the brand.
Asset to the brand. It really, really is. And so when we talk about the launches, right? I really want to get into your area of expertise. This is where
Mhm.
Breanna comes in, okay? These wow factors. So me and Breanna have conversations privately, y'all. And she's like, it has to pop. And I'm like, it's a book. Like, what are you talking about? But there's always a wow factor that I've heard other event planners besides Brianna talk about. And so, what do we do as authors, as publishers, when we are curating a book launch? We want it to be memorable. We don't
Right.
want our readers to forget about it. We want to connect their experience to the book to start at the launch, to be very frank. And so that's where you come in with all these wow factors and the pizzazz. So how do we
Yeah.
do that?
The fun stuff.
Oh, wow
So,
factor.
so first thing, I'm gonna start with, like you said, an asset to the brand. Brand is important here.
Mhm.
So branding should be one of your like top priorities.
Yeah,
You want to have yourself branded well, not everywhere, but everywhere.
everywhere.
Um,
Absolutely.
so your signage to be one of the first things you prioritize when you're putting on a book launch. And signage doesn't have to be like you've got some huge billboard out there and like that, but like you need to have even as simple as, I mean, it's a book. Have your bookmarks there, something people can actually grab and hold on to. Have some type of either step and repeat if you want to go that route, or have one of the like trade displays. So you need to have
Mhm.
something like visible that people can see, especially something a little bit bigger so that folks that are not necessarily right in your vicinity can still see that as well, because that will also help in drawing in a bit of a crowd for your book launch. So branding and signage is definitely key. We'll get into this a little bit later. It's not the cheapest thing, but it is a priority. So for sure. Plus, it helps with that wow factor. For every
Mhm.
event that I do, I always have some type of big signage there, and it's always a focal point. Um, Second thing is having some type of focal point in your room. Doesn't need to be anything like crazy over the top, but something that like draws people's eyes to the either center of your room. If you're gonna have some type of food and beverage, maybe something that draws people towards that area. So it could be something as simple as a balloon display. Doesn't have to be a super grand balloon display, but balloons are easy-ish
Mhm.
depending on the route you want to go with those. But
Mhm.
something simple as that. You could have something a little bit more fancy and go, I want to have a little, I don't know, champagne wall put up. Folks love their
Mhm.
champagne. Have that with your book, drinking and reading. That's what I like to do. So
Right. How we get the book sales.
there you, there you go. So you want just like little touches here and there, and then also try to incorporate something that is specific to your book. So again, let's say if I'm writing a book on event planning, I may do something where I have event an event table setup. I may do a mock dinner table setup that I have there, and I may have my book set up at that table and have people coming to sit down and have like a little mock dinner for an event, like as an event that I would do, but also a little bit of time for them to sit and talk to me and get to read a little bit of my book. So just different things that bring in a little bit of you, bring in a little bit of your book, but also you want to draw in eyes. And again, if you forget anything else I said, signage, please, please, please make sure you do your signage. That is key.
Yeah. So those are really, really good tips. And I love how you are discussing how to intentionally pull things from the content of the book and integrate it into the actual book launch. And it's almost like a wetting the whistle type of effect where you're helping the readers and the guests of your book launch to kind of get a taste, if you will,
Mhm.
of the book by integrating like various little things that are reflective of the book
Yeah.
at the actual launch.
Yeah. And then question for you, Janae.
Uh,
Like I haven't been to a ton of book launches, but
yeah.
so since it's your field, has there been something you've seen at someone else's book launch, but you're like, oh wow, that was really something neat, or I never would have thought of that.
So what I have enjoyed the most at book launches are the readings. I
Okay.
enjoy when we all, and this because I'm probably a nerd, whatever, but I like that it's a launch and a party type of thing. There's a cocktail situation where we're celebrating the author, and there's press and media, friends and family, readers, all of that jazz is great. But the reason why authors are my favorite kind of people is because I like books. So
Yeah.
I love when we all sit down, we're quiet, and the author is reading a excerpt from the book, and that's my favorite thing because when you get the book, you read the book in your head, right?
Right.
But very seldom do you have the opportunity to hear how the author envisioned it, unless of course you get the audiobook, which I do recommend all authors to get it to write an audiobook as well. A shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
But definitely get your nonfiction books into an audiobook, but that's for another episode. But I enjoy having a book reading launches that include a book reading. I enjoy launches that might have a host where you have
Mhm.
an individual who's asking you questions about your journey and why you wrote the book, who the book was intended for. I like the Q&A that also opens up to the audience where we're having a conversation where, because some people might have purchased the book through the pre-sales and maybe got some exclusive chapters or gotten the ebook while they waited for the printed book to be here. So they might have
Mhm.
already read the book some. And so they might have questions about, well, what did you mean here? Or how can I use that there? Or what made you put that there? Your readers have questions, especially especially fictional readers. They tend to one thing they love more than the book is is the author. They
Yeah.
really want to be all up in your business. Like they're so curious about who you are versus like nonfiction readers. They are here for information. Like if
Yeah.
you're writing a book about how to purchase a home, they want to know the ins and outs about purchasing a home. And so they might ask you questions. It'd be like, in page 47 when you talked about various types of lenders, right? What do I do? They might ask you questions that's pertinent to them specifically.
Yeah.
So I enjoy intentional engagement. I guess is a long story short, where the author is reading the book, the author is asking questions from the audience, and or the author has a host that's asking them some maybe pre-issued questions as well. That's what I tend
Yeah.
to enjoy.
I love that. And you should remind me something. Well, two things.
Mhm,
As far as one, having the host there.
mhm.
I'm a big fan of having hosts at my event, especially
Yeah,
um, for like launch type events. For example, I just did a TV show party launch. And so we had our host there for that event. And just having that, it kind of ups the vibe of your event,
sure.
especially when you get the
Mhm.
right host. He's very, lively, energetic, and kind of draw that crowd in. So that's definitely great to have. And then also, like you said, just having that conversation, having the author be able to read the book, it allows for those questions and the conversations. Um, One of my friends actually, she's an author and wrote a book, and this kind of leads me into more of the virtual space of events.
Yeah.
But we did a virtual event book launch for her initially because it was COVID time,
Mhm,
and just
mhm.
having that space for her to be able to read. And it since we were all just virtually, it was just a an open form of just questions for her. Again, obviously I knew her very well, but for those who didn't, getting
Yeah.
to ask questions more about her. Why did you write this book? Questions about the chapter that she read and understanding a little bit more behind that. So definitely, yeah, very, very important, awesome aspects of
Yeah.
that. Is and again, it's about getting to know you as the author. That's
Mhm.
essentially what this is. Who are you? What is your book? What is your brand? And so allowing for those moments to have that conversation with your readers.
Yeah, and I love that you said that because one thing that I think that we have to be mindful is connection and people support, people buy, people find their space with you as an author and whatever brand that you're building using your book as an asset when there's intimacy because there's
Yeah.
trust that comes from that. So even in a book launch that has 150 guests, that's a whole wedding, but 150 people there, you still want to create intimacy. You
Yeah.
still want the audience to feel like the guests rather to feel like they were right there with you, as if they were the only people in the room. So that's a different type of wow factor, if you will.
Yeah.
But certainly a wow factor. And so you touched on something with your friend's book that I didn't even think about, but I would love to explore a little bit is virtual book launches.
Hmm.
We, depending on who you ask, we are out of the pandemic. Depending on who you ask, right? But
Right.
at the end of the day, people are outside. So, with people being outside, should we still invest in having a virtual book launch?
Yes. I think one thing that did I guess a positive from the pandemic is this virtual world.
Mhm,
Because although I was tired of it after a while of just being virtual, it allowed for like the dual purpose. So
mhm.
even if you are outside, 'cause I'm very much outside, even if you are outside, you still have folks that are not, or you may have folks that just cannot physically get there. So
Mhm,
allowing for that virtual space still allows you to include them. And even if you're not doing a physical event and just strictly all virtual, that's totally fine as well. It's a little bit more intimate at times, it
mhm.
can be. It's to me needs to be a little bit more structured though,
Sure.
because you can tend to lose people. People have a short attention span. And so especially in a virtual environment, you want to make sure you've got a structure, you want to make sure you're kind of sticking to your time so that you're not losing your readers. that are interested in there, but it allows for it's literally just you and them.
Yeah.
There's no other outside distraction. So a perfect time for you to have those one-on-ones for them to really get to know you and have their questions answered by you and for you to share. And then also, I mean, not everybody can is in a space to put on a book launch right now. So a virtual way to do that without having to worry about the cost of it is going on a virtual platform. So
That's, and I think the conversation we were having earlier about the host, I think that's perfect, or necessary
yeah.
for the virtual space as well. Like you said, because we definitely want to keep folks engaged. So yeah, I definitely think that the host is there. So something that people have asked me so much, and I was like, this is a Breanna question, so tune into your authors, is curated list. So book launches, is your hey girl, hey, we're out here, we wrote a book, which is great. Invite
Mhm.
your friends, invite your family, amazing. But you should definitely be intentional about inviting people who fit into two categories. One category is your typical and ideal reader. So if you wrote a book about financial literacy and how to consolidate your credit, you might want to target your guest list to invite people who need information about how to consolidate their credit, who needs information about financial literacy. In
Yep.
addition to that, right, you also might need to, there's no might, you also do need to invite press and media. You need people who are going to run articles and blogs, and even if they can get some recordings of you to share on their platform or some news outlet platform or any type of media, are all great to have
Yeah.
at your event. And so, Breanna, what is your advice to an author about how to create a curated list that encompasses their ideal reader as well as press and media that can help with the support of promoting the book?
Yeah. Again, you kind of touched on some of it is again,
Okay.
you're gonna have your friends and your family there to support you. But yeah, you want to invite more than just your specific target audience. Because again, who you may think as just your target audience, they might know somebody else who's
Mhm.
probably a part of your target audience as well. So you don't want to limit yourself to, let's say I wrote a book on for teachers, to just inviting teachers, because somebody's grandma or whatever, she may not be a teacher, but she probably works with kids.
Mhm.
Or someone at the local church, she's probably not a teacher, but she may do Sunday school. So you don't want to limit yourself just by focusing on, well, I only wrote this book for teachers, so I'm only inviting teachers.
Mhm.
So that is important. The other part of it is, like you said, inviting media and press. Reach out to who your local media are, and especially in this social media world that we're in. Don't
Yes.
be afraid to message people on social media and reach out to like local influencers.
Mm.
The they are not all, but a lot of them are having positive impacts. Even I'll give you an example right now of one that is doing remarkable things, like on the TikTok platform.
Mhm.
If you're on TikTok, you've probably seen it, but Keith, who is a influencer in there who reviews um, food, but who's just out there, just all he's doing is just eating food like we do every single day, but
Yeah.
sharing with the world and changing people's lives. So don't be afraid to reach out to your social media influencers. There you have them on all levels, so you don't have to go for like the Kylie Jenners of the world, but like there are other people out here doing that, utilizing your local affiliates. You'd be surprised. A lot of your local news stations, they actually have people that work specifically looking for things like this.
Mhm.
So reaching out to them, they probably have someone who, if maybe they're an intern, maybe there's someone who's only been there a few years, but they have some people dedicated to looking for local stories. So yours could be something like that, where they share that on their morning news network.
Mhm.
Um, and then as far as your guest list, we talked about this before, but tapping into like Facebook groups.
Mm.
Facebook groups are huge. One, they can be so helpful in providing you with contacts of people, or they may be like, hey, I know somebody who's great for this, or they may be able to connect you with another group who may be great for coming to your book launch, or even just bouncing ideas off of people. So tapping into Facebook groups, whether you want to join a author's Facebook group, whether you want to join a
Mhm.
Facebook group that's full of teachers because, hey, I wrote a book about teachers, or just various Facebook groups. I'm a part of several Facebook groups just as an event planner, and it's been very beneficial for me. And then the networking aspect I've gotten out of these Facebook groups, you'd be very surprised.
Yeah.
So tapping into that um, definitely helps with curating, that perfect guest list of who do I really want at this launch. So I guess all that to say, you want a little bit of everybody, but really focus on not just being so zoned in on I only wrote this book for certain people, so I'm only going to invite those certain
Mhm.
people.
And I totally agree. And I think that um you mentioned something that I think that a lot of authors overlook is local media and local press, because everybody just wants to be on CNN.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be on the master class with Oprah Winfrey, you know? Everyone wants the big national press. And I am in full agreement that you should reach for the stars. But I definitely think that there is a pace that is required. There
Yeah.
is and that can be founded in your local media. So local radio stations, local news stations, even local magazines, because you'll be surprised depending on what city you're in. There is so many I guess you can say like indie publications that, feature culture and the arts, feature entertainment,
Yeah.
feature books and things of that sort. So find where you jam, you know. And another great point that you mentioned was influencers. I think press and media is great, but the people who really change the game when it comes to books are people who are book reviewers and book bloggers. And a lot of those folks are now dominating in the social media space. And what
Yes.
social media has done is it made everybody accessible. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Mhm.
the amount of people who slide in the DMs to write a book and asking me questions changes the game. It's almost like they have your phone number
Yeah.
and they could. And so I definitely recommend for you to certainly um utilize your resources to curating your list, but do it with have decorum,
Yes.
because you can't just be sliding in people's DMs. People, like, there has to be some etiquette around that. And we're actually gonna there's another episode that we have about collaborations. So make sure you tune into that so you can know how to slide in the folks' DMs. Because you don't want to turn people off and get some bad press, right?
Yes.
But certainly curate an intentional list that encompasses more than just your friends and family, because you want as many eyes on your book as possible.
Mhm.
And so definitely curate your list, because the goal from a publishing standpoint, the goal of your book launch is to promote and sell your
Hell
book.
yeah.
Your friends and family, we already know they're gonna get the book, but we need to get people in the room who can help expand your reach at your book launch, which will be fruitful for your book signings and your book tours that Breanna had mentioned, especially those Facebook groups. You're so right, it's a game changer.
You
And
are.
it's a game changer. And on like LinkedIn, the
Mhm.
LinkedIn groups as well. And what I'm starting to see, which I love that the pandemic has done, is that the book tours can be totally virtual. Like you can have tour stops into
Yeah.
Facebook groups and into LinkedIn groups, right? Or like with your podcasting, you can legit have a full book tour sitting at your
And
house.
not go nowhere.
Sitting at your house. So it's good to, I would say, build those relationships and continue in nurturing those relationships. And one thing that I tell all the authors, the leaders who we help become authors, is that you need to go through your low hanging fruit list.
Mhm.
Like, who do you have in your Rolodex? Who do you already have in your network right now that you can leverage to say, like, if I was to be writing a book on event planners, I know I need to tap into Breanna. I don't know, I don't have access to event planners, but I know somebody who does. Breanna,
Yeah.
how can we work together to reach this common goal? So also tap into your resources. Like Breanna said, you don't know whose grandma knows who, you know? So definitely the people that you have in the favorite section in your phone, the people who are always sending you memes and reels on your DMs, that's prime real estate. Like those are people
Yeah.
who can definitely help connect you to other people. So definitely capitalize on those folks for sure.
For sure. And actually, just I thought about something that I forgot to mention earlier as far
Mhm.
as with your book launch, you should also have somebody who's there just documenting everything. Because along with that
Mm.
social media, yes, you want folks to be sharing about it on social media, but you want to also have a presence on your own social and have that document from your book launch. So make sure you have somebody there who is getting video of you reading a chapter from your book, getting those photos, all of that, that will also help in curating your presence as well online and with social.
For sure. Content.
Yes, get the
Get
content.
the content. Content is everything. And one thing that I like about content, especially video content, is that you can repurpose it. You can legit have a book launch in January and show clips from it in June as you
Yep.
are relaunching, or even if you just want to get more book sales for the month of June, you can pull some of those clips from the launch in January and use it in June, and voila, magic, you know?
Yep.
Content does not expire, people. Okay, so make sure that is the top people on your list. It's the people who are gonna get the content. And that's really, and I didn't even think about this, but that's a really good point, because you also want to make sure that you have that you're intentional around elements of the digital space into
Mhm.
your live event. So you should maybe get a hashtag, right? You should have
You know
some
what you should
type.
do with that? Put that on your branding that you're gonna have at your event everywhere.
Yes, your
Hashtag.
hashtag, what to add, tell people, to add Miss Janae B,
Yes.
at Nicole Events, put our hashtag, and when they take pictures, when they're posting their videos, they are creating a whole virtual experience on social media. Like, you need to make yourself a trending topic.
Yes. And then you can
Hmm.
even go as far as having your own QR code and
Yeah.
having that branded and have that either linked to your book's website or linked to your social, or you can even have it all on there linking to that, or you can
Hmm.
even link it to something where they can reach you directly. If they have
Hmm.
more, you have more questions about the book, QR code this, reach me this way, and we can chat. Like just different
Hmm.
things like that to kind of help with personalizing it, but also again adding to that digital platform.
For sure. Content, people. Do not miss an opportunity. Do not miss an opportunity. So, Brianna, we've talked about a lot of the fun stuff, right?
Mhm. I know where
And
you're
you already know what
going.
I'm about to ask. You already know what I'm about to ask. But something that we have to have a real conversation with is budgeting. Like, these things is like, oh, let's do this. Oh, let's do this. But we also have to consider the cost, and not just consider the cost because we want a penny pinch, but because I don't want our listeners to get gypped. Right,
Right.
like I want them to be informed when they are putting these things together. Or you can just call Breanna Wolfe and have her run this whole thing. But that's another shameless plug. But Brianna, how much should we budget for? What are the things that should be included in the budget?
Yeah.
The itemized things for budgeting for a book launch.
So first you need to ask yourself before you go down this road
Hmm.
is um one, how much money am I okay parting with if I don't see that money again?
That's
You
a
need to
real
start
question.
there.
That's a
Um,
real question.
because if you're in a space where it's like, if I let this, let's say $1,000 go and be hurting, then we probably don't want to go into a big, in-person book launch right away. It's
Mhm.
okay to go the virtual route right away, which is a great way for a money saving route to do that. But let's say you're like, you know what, I'm going big. I want to go all in. Then you want to think about, okay, where do I want to have this book launch? Is there going to be a cost for the venue? Are you able to find a spot where you don't have to pay for the venue, because that could be a big portion of your cost. If you can find a venue that's free, fantastic, jump on that.
Mhm.
But if not, you got to think about that. You got to think about, okay, do I need to pay to have things like just tables and chairs? Do I need to have that? Do I need to pay for my food and beverage? How much is that going to cost me? How many people am I planning on inviting? So just like the basics of those are things you should plan to budget for, as well as, are you going to do this yourself? Are you going to be a DIY type of book launch? Or are you decide, I'm going to go all out and hire Bre Nicole Events to put on my event, and you're going to have to hire a
Yes.
planner,
Yes.
because that could be more expensive. That could be more expensive going that route. So it's all about, one, kind of getting an understanding of, one, where you are financially already.
Mhm.
And then once you know that, deciding how grand, or how, not necessarily small, but the scale that you're willing to go for this book launch. And it's okay to be like, you know, I'm not there yet where I can do this grand book launch. Do a smaller one, and you can still do another launch
Mhm.
down the road later and do the more grander scale thing if that's what you're interested in. So when it comes down to the numbers, it's always hard for me to give numbers.
We'll give ranges if it's easier.
Let's see ranges. So
Okay.
let's, for, if you're in a virtual book launch, you don't really have to worry about too much. Couple $100 just to focus on having some type of branding virtually.
Mhm.
Um, if we're going in person, you're gonna want to start at about the 15. I'm gonna say about the 1,500 range
Okay.
to like 15 to 2,500 if we're going to go small. And
Okay.
that will vary depending on where you are, what state you live in, all things like that. But I'd
Mhm.
say start there, just so you can take care of all those things I mentioned, like, what is a venue going to cost me? Venue may be the most expensive thing that costs you $1,000 right there.
Mhm.
That's eating the most of your budget. So just thinking about things like that. And then you could also be as grand as, you know what, I'm throwing all the money at it, and
Yeah,
that
you
can be as
can.
much as like 5 grand or more. So
Mhm.
it all varies, but it's important to, like I said, think about, how much money am I willing to part with? And if I don't see that back, I'm okay. Because obviously you do want to make sales from your book, which will help you
Right.
get that money back.
Mhm.
But that may not happen right away. So you've got to be in a space financially to know, I'm going to be okay doing this. And this is an investment into my book and into my future.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you coined it that way, as an investment, because
Yeah.
for me, I have like a rule. If I'm going to um if my book launch is the budget's going to be this, then I also have a goal of how many books I'm going to sell at this event, so that I know that the money that I'm putting in, I'm also going to get back. And I think that's how we have to look at it. This
Yeah.
is not just a party, right? This is
Right.
definitely, in my opinion, a fundraiser to an extent, where
Yeah.
we are intentionally selling a product. We're intentionally making connections to sell the product in bulk. We
Yeah.
are intentionally inviting people who can help us expand our reach to sell the product in bulk, or to leverage for us to get into other rooms. Like, especially for my leaders and nonfiction authors, you may not, God forbid, but you may not sell one book, but you might leave with a speaking engagement,
Hmm.
right? Or at the speaking engagement, they're paying you to speak, and then also asking you to sell your books at the event, or the book sales are embedded into your contracts, right? So you
Yeah.
have to think about how you could leverage your book launch to ensure that you get a return on your investment, which is the budgeting for this event. I also think, to my authors, to be mindful of your pre-sales, right?
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot. If you guys follow me, my Pro Tip Tuesdays, I talked about how your pre-sales is a form of crowdfunding where you could sell the book through your pre-sales and repurpose the money to do things like finalizing your editing or finalizing your book formatting, but also to fund
Marketing for
your
your book
book
launch.
launch.
Yep.
Mhm. You know, you could pre-sell your book there and recoup your money. And so I think, you know, it's important to have the wow factors and Breanna to come in and make it an event that no one's going to forget, but to make it an event that you're not going to forget. You want to make sure that you also have a book plan. What is going to be the goal for sales or for connections at my book launch so that you can see a return? I'm not in the business of doing anything for nothing. You know,
Yeah,
like you have to have some type of intentionality. And so I definitely think that that's something that you should totally look into.
for sure. I
Mhm.
definitely agree with that. Yeah. Like I said, investment. You're making an investment in yourself.
Mhm.
And if you're not gonna do it, who is? So you might
Right.
as well. So, um, and then just take the time to plan ahead, um, with that. So like, don't just, oh, I wrote a book now, I'm gonna just jump into the book launch right away. Like, as you're working on your book, know that the book launch comes a part of it. So be planning ahead and budgeting ahead
Yep.
for when that time does come.
Budgeting ahead is definitely key. And again, you could always do a virtual book launch. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that your launch is subpar or the great value version of book launches. It's very well something that's still very common,
Yeah.
right? And then also to what Brianna was talking about earlier, you get a lot of content from a virtual event because it's already digital, right? So
Yep.
definitely think through what you want, how you want it, and how you can get a return, regardless if it's virtual or in person.
For sure. For
Mm.
sure. You
Yes,
got
ma'am.
it.
Yes, ma'am. So I think we've solved the world's problems. We covered everything book launches. I hope this was a great interview, a great show for you guys, and that you've learned a lot. And so before we wrap up, Brianna, share with us how our listeners could connect with you.
Yes, so you can follow me on Instagram, which is at Bre Nicole Events. You can also hit me up on my personal page, which is at Bre Nicole .w. My website, BreNicoleEvents.com. Feel free if you ever have questions on events, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM, let me know. If you need help with an event, if you're like, I don't want to do it, I'm hands off, take over for me. I got you covered. Just give me a call, DM, text, whatever. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for all of our listeners, you know that you can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at obpublishing.com, as well as visit our website, www.obpublishing.com. And I always leave you guys with a Dear Authors affirmation. And so my affirmation for this episode is your book launch is an investment into your book career, your author career rather. So be very intentional with every element that goes into planning, and it's okay to delegate. Hire somebody. I call Brianna for everything. And so remember, authors, that this is an investment into your author career, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the amazing book launches that come from it. So until next time, have a wonderful day and be well.